We're good, thanks. Sorry, good. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Yes, I'll welcome Terrence early.
I'm going to be talking about mainly dissemination of innovation theory, which is the basic science behind how do we get new treatments like ketamine and plant-based psychedelic therapies out there, and what are the hurdles for doing this, and what can we do as a grassroots movement to get this to occur. Now, as I mentioned, I started doing research in anesthetic therapy in 1999, looking at high doses of a conventional anesthetic agent called sevoflurane that in a high enough dose produces an antidepressant treatment every bit as effective as electroconvulsive therapy. I replicated some results by Dr. Gerhard Langer, who's an Austrian psychiatrist, and done the same thing with isoflurane. And when I tried to get this in print, one of the reviewers said, well, if it was such a great treatment, it should have taken off when Dr. Langer published his original results in the 90s. He did an open label blinded comparison with CT. And actually called up Dr. Langer and I asked him about it, and his experience was exactly the same as mine. He worked with him for over 15 years at the University of Vienna. He always found it to be every bit as effective as ECT. Because there's no seizure involved, there's no cognitive disturbance. These results have just been replicated by a group at the University of Utah. This can be done at every hospital in the country. It doesn't require any special equipment other than what is ordinarily used for surgery. But the only reason we can't use it are financing and red tape and misperception of the medical legal risk. Okay? So our current state of affairs is that ketamine is a broadly available anesthetic agent used every day in surgical procedures. It's currently available from psychiatrists who do it in their office like I do very frequently as an IM or a sub-Q treatment. I did an IV initially at Baylor in 2007 at College Hospital as an IV treatment before I began doing private practice. Every psychiatrist and everybody that I know that's trying to do ketamine in any kind of an institutional setting has run into roadblock after roadblock after roadblock and tried to get it available, which is why it's not currently available through the VA. And currently, as far as I know, I'm the only person trying to get insurance to defray the cost of ketamine. I've had new residents come learn how to do ketamine. I was the first person to do ketamine. Tried to do it as an integrated therapy in a private psychiatric practice in the state of California. And I've had young people come and learn how to do it, but I've not been successful in getting any of my colleagues who see the same results that I see and did at Baylor when I was there and adopting it into their practice. And part of the problem is financial, that they can see 3 or 4 patients for a med check, and they can easily make more money than I do charging for insurance to do ketamine. And I take Medicare. I don't think anybody else takes Medicare. I actually even take a few Medi-Cal patients. I don't take Blue Shield because they're pretty bastards. I just don't put up with them. I've tried to make it available, and we still don't quite have the financial problem solved. Part of the issue is getting ketamine to pay for itself. Getting my colleagues in psychiatry to adopt ketamine is going to involve having them make at least as much money as they would make in their general psychiatric practice. That's part of the problem. So currently, ketamine charges, the cost of the going rate is about $500 to $600 a treatment. And usually a series of 6 treatments is what's recommended. So this is a treatment that is available for the 1%, not for the 99%. So how do we get ketamine available for the 99%? Ketamine's closer than anything else plant-based to getting out there because it's used so widely in anesthetic therapy that there's no way that they're going to take it apart. And being a pure pharmaceutical agent, unlike a plant-based agent, you don't have to fight that battle. You don't have to fight the battle of getting reclassified from a so-called class 1 to a class 3 agent. So anything we can do to get ketamine out there is going to forge the way for getting other drugs out there. How do we break the mold for our broken system for getting really bad treatments out there to get new and effective treatments like ketamine out there? Next slide. And here's point 1, mechanical versus living systems. Okay. Right now, back when Descartes was inventing the scientific method, he would do things like dissect animals, like this cat here. And he couldn't help but notice that parts of the animal body are mechanical, like the hip joint. The hip joint looks very much like the levers and clocks and mechanical ducts and creatures that were so popular in courts of the time. So he basically initiated a tradition in science of making mechanical models of things. And a mechanical model is technically what's called a linear dynamical system. The input that you put into the system is directly proportional to the output that comes out of the system. The car is another example. Trying to feel this way, feels could go predictable in degree that way. And these linear mechanical systems are simple, so that they've become kind of the paradigm of this is what a system is. So much so that this is our big trick in science, is to take a messy process, like say an ecosystem in the stock market, and to try to clumsily make a linear dynamical model of it. In fact, it's a different type of model entirely. It's a so-called non-linear dynamical system, like your cat. So if you wind up your clock or throw it across the wall, you know what it's going to do. You try doing that with your cat, it's totally unpredictable. Okay? Non-linear dynamical systems are what's called mathematically chaotic. The very small differences in initial settings are amplified over time, so that they're unpredictable. That's what makes them hard to adopt as a model for doing scientific practice. So this goes also in for the legal profession. It likes to assume that the world works mechanically, like Leibniz thought, and that we can parcel out shades of blame, and that everything should be as predictable as we now know it's not, even with quantum mechanical physics. And so a big part of the problem here is that we're making a category mistake. We're thinking of treatment dissemination as being a process of working with a mechanical system and using a mechanical algorithm to get treatments out there. And when we make this mistake, then we think that good treatments are just going to get adopted, and they're not. Instead, the healthcare treatment system is a nonlinear dynamical system, a living system like the stock market, like Los Angeles, like Southern industry. And as such, it's unpredictable, and the science of ecology has multiple stories of trying to achieve something like, say, increase the number of cute little chipmunks in the forest park by poisoning all foxes. And before you know it, there's too many damn rabbits, and rabbits have fleas that give diseases, and everything dies. But there's too many feedback loops and too many unintended consequences. This is kind of a deep point. It took me probably 2 years to really begin to understand this, but I think it's really kind of key to understanding some of the challenges to disseminating innovations. Because what we're doing is we're not fixing a clock, we're fixing an ecosystem. We try to make treatments about it. Okay, next slide. All right, so we're talking about mechanical versus living systems. Mechanical or simple systems are precise, explicit, rigid, and predictable. They are insensitive to context and flexible. They form kind of the robot view of science. I think of putting on your robot glasses when you put this in. And they serve as kind of like the basis of medical practice, law, and organizational regulation. There's a guy named Togolandi who wrote a book called The Checklist Manifesto. Made a very good point that if you have a nurse standing next to the surgeon making a checklist saying, right patient, right procedure, right side of the body, so forth and so on, you're going to lower your complication rate. And this is a good example of where a simple system applies. Okay? Simple mechanical systems work in simple mechanical situations. Now, unfortunately, my average patient that walks in the door that has 3 or 4 medical problems and 5 or 6 psychiatric problems and a personal history that's important and a history of various medications, this is not a simple system. This is a complex adaptive system. Okay? And it calls for a different type of thinking that is currently undervalued in the medical profession. Okay, this is why when you go to see your doctor, you think you're going to the Department of Motor Vehicles, and you know you shouldn't be at the Department of Motor Vehicles. You should be talking to your doctor. Okay? Slide. So the limitations of conventional robot medicine are, first of all, treatment research. All of the treatment research we have is, with a few exceptions, done with the goal of getting a drug on the market. Okay. All right, and so the first thing they do is they screen out treatment-resistant patients because that's going to kill their chance of getting a drug on the market. They've already spent a lot of money on trying to get the drug up to this point. So most of the research doesn't apply to patients that are walking in my field using something like ketamine. Okay. There is no long-term data. I mean, one of the things you hear from the pharmaceutical companies is ketamine needs more long-term data. At this point, ketamine's got more long-term data than anything short of like a compulsive therapy. And they'll keep saying that as long as they try to keep blocking ketamine from coming on the market. Negative findings are discarded, so-called firewall effect. If you spend several thousands of dollars doing a study and the drug goes, that's, you don't want to put it in a journal. You have chances of getting the drug out there until it does not. Conventional treatments work the same way. The way that we come up with new antidepressants is the same boring way the old ones came up with, and the old ones have an effect, a so-called effect size, magnitude of effect. It's really not that great. It's about 0.3, 0.35, which is a mediocre effect size. So there's a lot of reasons why we misperceive antidepressants as being a lot more effective than they really are, which I won't go into right here. But those of us who fought the battle with the psychotherapists realize that 20-30% of people with depression don't get well, even though they've tried everything in the world. And they're just not that great. And there's a halo effect for patent treatments. I think this probably goes back to antibiotic therapy. That penicillin and miraculous antibiotics came out, and suddenly people were all dying of polio and all these terrible diseases. We became conditioned to think that the best new treatments in medicine are the newly patented psychotropics. And this is no longer the case. But there's also an anti-halo effect, that everything else that's not a newly patented medicine is misperceived as being much less effective. Okay, so I put in this category things like methylfolate, if you have problems with your folic acid receptor with your THFR is necessary, magnesium, all these things that, healthy things that we should be looking at exploiting, not only plant-based medicines, but that are often an essential part of getting better, and we mistakenly think that they are worthless because any high school kid in a health food store can sell you this. They don't need to have an MD. Right. Next slide. Okay, now here's point 2. Viewing treatment as an ecosystem. Okay, those of you that have been down south recognize that this is kudzu. Okay? And kudzu was originally introduced as an ornamental vine to control erosion, and it's a very virulent plant that grows at a rate of about a meter per day. And you find these areas down south where it's basically eaten up all the other vine plants in the area. So in this ecosystem here, there were a number of niches that had a lot of other plants and animals that could have potentially lived there. Okay? And when kudzu got put in, there were actually people going around planting kudzu, like we have pharmaceutical representatives going around to the doctor's offices and giving this newly patented psychotropic medicines. And kudzu occupied all of these niches, okay? So that it's impossible for new biological mass to crawl in here. Same thing with ketamine. Same thing with plant-based medicines. Same thing with transcranial magnetic stimulation. These new drugs that are marketed for $900 to $1,000 a month, they generate a lot of profit. And that profit goes into sales forces. And there are social networks involved here. So when we think about getting something like ketamine out there, we need to think that when Pfizer is launching the next version of Lexapro, they already are getting on the phone with insurance companies, with Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. They're filing the paperwork, and they're getting their ducks in order before the drug comes out. When the drug finally comes out, and some attractive young pharmaceutical representative gives me a sample box and says, prescribe it, they don't want it to fall flat on its face and for you to find out that it's not going to be covered. It's going to be covered. Okay. Not the case with ketamine. There's no pharmaceutical. There's no financial incentive driving ketamine onto the market. When I was working with this back at Baylor, trying to figure out how to get ketamine paid for in Methodist, I realized Methodist wouldn't eat the cost forever. And I called around to every organization I could find in the government. Finally, a letter, Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services said that there is no government agency that is charged with promoting treatment simply because they're effective and the only thing that's an exception is the Orphan Drug Act. And ketamine works for pain, works for depression. These are not orphan diseases. Okay. One thing we can do is amend the Orphan Drug Act and have an Orphan Treatment Act, where we could have treatments like ketamine that have recognizable value that should be promoted. The other thing she said was that every 6 months there's an opportunity for grassroots input from people to write in and get a hold of people and say, this treatment should be covered at such a rate, or should be promoted. And at this point, ketamine, when it's reimbursed, if at all, it's reimbursed at less than $100 for treatment. That's not enough to get the average guy interested in doing that, taking the risk of that. Okay. Next slide. Point 3, treatments as means. Okay, now when we're talking about a complex adaptive system, a living system, okay, we tend not to think of parts, we tend to think of agents or memes. We think of computer memes on your computer. Memes are, this is a term introduced by Richard Dawkins to refer to pieces of information that act like replicates, act like genes, that follow the Darwinian algorithm, variation, selection, and reproduction and preservation of form. Okay. And there are many things that affect whether or not a treatment mean will survive that have nothing at all to do with the utility for the patient. Okay. So in the diffusion of innovation literature, for example, if you want to introduce a process of boiling water to Peruvian villagers to prevent river blindness, you're not going to be successful because these Peruvian villagers believe that there is a fire demon that jumps off into the boiling water that will make them sick. And this whole area of diffusion innovation theory talks about what is it that makes a mean treatment succeed or fail. And we have to pay attention to this because when it comes right down to it, the utility for the patient is pretty low on the list, particularly in the institutional setting. Okay. You try to get, talking from personal experience here, you try to go up to your typical hospital administrator or department chairman and say, hey, let's do some psychedelic therapy because it could really help people with depression and pain and anxiety. And the first thing they think of is medical legal risk, for, bad news on the front page. The first time I suggested at Cottage Hospital that we should use the palliative care protocol to do ketamine for psychiatric treatment, and that we should use the protocol that the palliative care team had already written and been in place for many years. First thing I heard from the director of pharmacy was, oh, I'm pretty sure we can't do that here. Even though the night before, ketamine was used to treat toe pain in the pediatrics ward right next door. Okay? And then when I first started doing ketamine at Cottage Hospital, we were seeing great results. We were seeing people that had ECT that were responding to it. About a month or two into it, the vice chairman of the department of head of psychiatry found out that I was doing it, put everything to a screeching halt, and got the anesthesiologist together to make sure that we weren't doing anything that was going to get them in trouble. And let's just say that the lack of enthusiasm and reception I had at Cottage led me to now do all of my ketamine in private practice, which is typical of most of us who do ketamine. So, final slide. What do we do? Well, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services does have an actual innovation page. They didn't used to have this. Okay. And I spoke with Jasmine Thomas, who is the representative that works with Director Mr. Adam Bowman. Okay, this is her email address and Mr. Bowman's email address. And we need to begin to do a grassroots campaign from those of us seeing the amazing results of treatments like ketamine and plant-based medicine. And we have to break the mold. We have to begin to teach the government that we need more than profit-making patented medicines, that we need medicines that actually work, that are cheap, that could be widely available. I personally advocate for ketamine because it is cheap, it has fewer obstacles to overcome. I think if we could break the mold with ketamine, then we could get a lot closer to doing MDMA and psilocybin and some of these other treatments. It's going to be a hard battle. Maybe at some point, perhaps, I think a discussion on psychedelics and the political brain would be a very interesting topic here, because we have to remember that psychedelic research came to a halt when paranoid old President Nixon became convinced that was reinforcing his opposition to the anti-war movement, and there's some reasons for that. Okay. So this is my last slide here. We have to advocate for coverage of office-based ketamine for pain psychiatric illness at a reimbursement rate not too high, because we don't want to get people. There are already too many entrepreneurs in the area, but enough to pay for the cost of doing it, so that people can overcome their aversive worry about medical legal risk and at least realize they're not going to be losing money in what they're doing. That's all I got.
questions?
I have a question about the mechanical versus the, what's the other one? I can't even think of.
Living systems.
Living systems. I came across, somebody sent me a YouTube video on a subject called morphic resonance developed by Rupert Sheldrake.
Yeah.
And he breaks down the intelligence of the universe into mechanical. And living systems. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, this used to go under the heading of what was called vitalism. I like to think of it as neo-vitalism. The recognition that living systems categorically are different from non-living systems, okay? The last person that really kind of made a good argument for this, I think, was a philosopher, Henri Bergson, in the 20s, where he talked about living systems having something they thought was recon fluid, Iran Vital. And now we understand that it comes down to the mathematics. Fritjof Capra, if you could speak to that, has a really good book, The Web of Life, where he talks about the mathematics involved here. That in a linear dynamical system, the equations for each of the individual parts are linear. So it's like y equals some constant k times x. Okay? And that's why the systems are additive. The input that you put in is proportional directly to the output. Okay? In a nonlinear dynamical system, the equations that describe the behavior of different parts are nonlinear. So it's like y equals x cubed or something like that. And that gives it unusual mathematical properties. It's like the weather that makes it categorically unpredictable. Not to say that there aren't rules of how these systems work. In the mid-'80s, it was recognized that you could model these nonlinear systems using high-speed computer programs that use something called Monte Carlo techniques, where you would put in like slight differences for the value of x and for y, and you could crunch out the numbers, and you could get some rough estimate of how these nonlinear systems work over time. And so if you get online and look at the Santa Fe Institute, you see a lot of the research going on in complexity of science and how it applies to across the board to broad field what we call complex adaptive systems. Maybe you could speak to that since you don't work with this much longer.
Only to add that living systems is describing things that are alive and they're very unpredictable, in contrast to trying to make things so simple that it doesn't have an accurate reflection of what's really going on. So that's the basic distinctions. Any questions?
I like a little thought about just kind of a new system coming into the works, either combining both, and not to be pessimist or negative or anything like that, but with population growth, I'm just interested in like any thoughts on, populations increasing, where's the incentive for, government or legals or medicine, where's their incentive to help the individual? And I think that's kind of why maybe it's so mechanical, is because they want to just take one easy way for everybody, and then it's like, how likely will it be that they care for the individual, especially the population growth?
It's a good question. I mean, I think insurance companies are not in the business of extending benefits. They're in the business of diminishing benefits. Several years ago, multiple academic medical centers realized that diabetes care centers would be very helpful and institute these programs that would taught diabetic patients to do frequent blood testing and diet and so forth. And by every clinical standard, their outcome was better. But they all failed because insurance companies paid for amputations, retinal surgery, kidney dialysis, the end stages of kidney failure. So we have to look at some different way of getting insurance companies motivated. And I think beginning with Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services is a good point because they serve as kind of the standard bearer for insurance companies. Insurance companies take the lead. Now, in this email list that we have with people throughout the world that are doing ketamine, we have some people that are in the National Health Service. Okay? And the way ketamine becomes available in the National Health Service is kind of like what happened with Kaiser. I have a friend who, if anybody needed ketamine, she's in Hawaii, she definitely should have had ketamine. It's been a year. She's getting a runaround. It's It's going to be severely limited, delayed. It's not going to be. If I see a patient in my office in the morning, like I did yesterday, who's severely suicidal, tried to hang himself twice and drove a car off a cliff, I can do a ketamine treatment on the afternoon. In most cases, get rid of the suicidality. Our healthcare system is not going to be, we're going to screw it up. We're going to make it too expensive, we're going to make it over-monitored, and then we're going to make it hard to be flexible enough to be really worthwhile.
Any questions?
I'm just wondering, on a personal level, how frustrated do you get? How do you? How do you?
Well, you know, the biggest question I get from patients is why aren't other psychiatrists doing this? And you know, you've heard my long answer. You know, I think things are coming. I mean, there's more and more positive knowledge about ketamine coming out there, but it's still it could die. You know, I worked with 2 treatments doing anesthetic research before I began doing ketamine. One of them is the halothane, high-dose halothane received form therapy that probably is never going to get out there, even though it would be very valuable and every hospital could do it. You don't even need an ECT machine. And it would be every bit as effective as electroconvulsive therapy with no cognitive side effect, but there's no way to get it out there. Another one was an old treatment called facilitated psychotherapy. We now understand that it's a way of treating post-traumatic stress disorder by using agents like barbiturates or even propofol to desensitize the brain to treat the emotional memory component of PTSD. And that's something that went extinct around the Vietnam War simply because it's old-fashioned. We have this new science of psychopharmacology that like it could treat everything, and a variety of reasons, but basically it was a treatment that went extinct. You know, we have to remember that when Prozac first came out, it was a godsend. It was the best treatment ever. And it was only about 10 years later when the patent ran out that we began to think about, well, it's got too long half-life, too many interactions with other drugs, and maybe it's not such a good drug to begin with. You know, that's the product cycle of the treatment. And of course, it's just as good a drug as it ever was. It just becomes extinct and not profitable. And we start to make up stories why it's not working.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.